Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Gay as in Stupid. We're your hosts, Isaac.
And Aaron.
And what the fuck was that?
I had a pebble and I dropped it.
Genuinely I'm at a loss for words why you just had a pebble. But
it was smooth and pretty. Just like me.
Okay, you little twink bitch. Anyways, this month's episode is going to be about Broadway, specifically how Broadway and like musicals and theater in general is like super heavily connected to the gay community, and how like if like you're a man and you're in theater, you're like considered gay, and like it's just considered such like a homo thing to be like into.
It's also so shitty for lesbians too. Like lesbian representation in theater sucks.
Yeah, but like that like mainstream and like everybody like around us like just associates Broadway with gays, but like the LGBT community really isn't having their stories like uplifted in Broadway. And like it's weird, isn't it, that like if like we're like supposedly like the forces behind it and the only people who like actually like it according to a lot of like people out there, then like why aren't there more gays and lesbians like in it and like telling their stories and having characters like them? And we're just going to kind of like talk about that and like our feelings on it and some gripes we have with Broadway, since like we're both like going into that industry in the future.
Aww. Yeah, Isaac fucks lighting, so
you couldn't see me, but I just fucking whipped real hard.
God, you nerd.
And now I'm dabbing.
Fuck
real
you.
Hard.
Yeah, so Isaac does theater production, and I am an actor, so we both got some opinions, some hot takes.
Yeah. Got some feelings on that Broadway shit. So, yeah.
Personally, for me, like, I've been into theater since I was, like, 13.
Same.
God, we're such nerds.
Yeah.
Or, like, aware of theater, you know, like, of musicals and Broadway and stuff, and, like, the sphere and the fandom. And as I become more and more, like, aware of that and more involved with it, there's just been this trend of, like, there's gay musicals and there's a few trans musicals, but they just aren't popular within like the theater community and theater fandoms and stuff. And even things like Falsettos, which has a pretty big following, and you know, it's had like a revival, and recording was like out in movie theaters and stuff like that. Now I see a lot of people like in the community and stuff kind of like purposely pushing it into obscurity by being like, oh, this isn't relatable to anyone, no one will understand this story, it's not like, I don't know, it's not what the teens want and shit like that, which they do to pretty much every LGBT musical except like Rent, which they're shitty about too. So yeah, so it's like they exist, but they don't get the money that shit like, I don't know, like SpongeBob and Mean Girls is going to get. They don't get the kind of popularity and notice that Hamilton gets. And it's like, it's on purpose. I mean, I don't know. I said that really badly. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I kind of agree with, like, it feels very deliberate, the way, like,
yeah,
just like how we talked about in like the first episode we had about the barrier gay trope. it feels very deliberate about how like they don't tell our stories, because like it is that whole like no one will relate to this. You're a minority. Masses won't relate. And I know on the topic of falsettos, I was back in high school when it got revived. And I remember for the school newspaper, I wrote an article about how falsetto is reviving now was really important, because like I feel like a lot of people do forget like the AIDS crisis, and while like that is only near like the end of the show, I feel like I felt like it was due time that like we had that reminder of community and things like that. Because I know like again with like the whole like, oh, it's not relatable, and it's like, well, obviously it's not, like it's not that time period. It's a very, very specific family situation Marvin finds himself in. Marvin's a bitch the entire time. And like,
honestly, like if you can relate to like a musical based off of cartoon characters, for instance, in kind of a fantasy situation, like you can relate to stuff like falsettos, because it's not like your exact situation, you know, it's not your exact time period or your exact world, but there are like universal human characteristics that we can connect to. And so when people like write that stuff off because it's like, oh, an obscure highbrow musical, which it's not. Musicals are not highbrow. Musicals are supposed to be entertainment for the people, and that's what I love about them. But when people go off like that, it always feels like there's kind of a trend, you know, in how they talk about those things. And I feel like there's this huge disconnect between the representation that LGBT theater is actually given, and the attention that it's actually given, and the attention that people say it's given. Because in theater spaces, I've found they present themselves as very LGBT friendly and very like pro gay, especially. Sometimes they're like, we love trans people, but mostly we're an afterthought. They just like never think about lesbians because they're shitheads. But anyway, they present themselves as very pro-gay. And then in like theater fandom spaces, you just have people going around being like, go watch Be More Chill. Be More Chill has so much LGBT representation. And like, oh, the boys from Dear Evan Hansen are gay because they said the word gay in one line of one of the songs. And not LGBT musicals. They're not like created to tell LGBT stories. And in a lot of the cases with, or some of the cases with these things, the creators and the actors have intentionally queer baited their audience because they know that the audience is made up of young LGBT people who connect to their work. And so stuff like that. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, like, talking about, like, creators who've, like, intentionally done that, like, recently the one that, like, really, like, grinds my gears, and, like, Aaron and I have talked about it a lot, and, like, I've talked about it with a lot of my other, like, gay friends who are into theater, was, like, the whole deal with Be More Chill, like, the queer baiting with Michael, like, the guy who wrote the script, Joe Trage or whatever, he, like, originally, before, like, it was revived and all that shit, was like, it's up for interpretation. Like, I left it kind of vague for a reason, but, like, not confirming. And even if he did, it's not canon. And so, like, because it's not set in the musical. So that's kind of irrelevant. Like, because, like, it's not present in the musical. That's something he thought of afterwards. If it's not apparent in the work and, like, it's not really coded, like, people will be like, oh, well, he was coded, but that's not how coding works. Coding is a very, very, like, distinct, like, set of things that are followed so that, like, we could find each other and have that representation, but that's not coded. And then when it gets big again because of a bunch of, like, gay and trans teens, because that is the entire fan base of it, let's be fucking honest. The reason it flopped before was because adults weren't sending money to it because they didn't fucking want to see it. And I'm just going to say, legally, I can say whatever I want about Be More Chill because I have a tattoo of it. So, like, Don't try me, assholes.
I mean, like, me and Isaac met because of Be More Chill, so
yeah. But like, and then with like the whole Michael thing is like, they're like, oh, a popular design of him, and like everybody thinks he's gay, so they gave him the gay patch, and so everybody goes, oh my god, they're making Michael gay. They're making Michael gay, and then it's never addressed in canon, and the actor says he's just an ally, and it's for his like gay moms, which like that's such a bitch move.
They never mention his gay moms in the show either. I'm just gonna point that
that's
out.
outside the show as well, and like that's such a bitch move.
Yeah, literally. Also, like, I don't know. I'm not gonna go into that because it's kind of off topic from theater, but it's just stupid. But yeah, also the other thing is that Broadway shows and like musicals in general aren't like books or like movies, or like they aren't stationary. They change and they evolve, and a lot of shows change as they move from like workshops to being performed to going to off-Broadway to going to Broadway, and they get reimagined and things get moved around and new songs get created and old songs get taken out. So like they could have, in this process, like the original creators were involved in the off-Broadway and now Broadway shows of this show. So they had the opportunity to actually make Michael gay, or to, in the end of the show, they have one of the characters say that he's bi, and they had the opportunity to involve that more in the plot. And they had the opportunity to do all of this stuff after they'd seen that, because basically it's like, it was the work of like a small group of LGBT teenagers that made this fandom big and that gained it a lot of attention. So, and they know this. So they saw this and they had the opportunity to like then acknowledge these people by just doing something small like that in the actual canon of the show and actually changing it. And they didn't make those changes. So it kind of like, I feel like then they don't have the right to be like, oh, it's so ambiguous. Like, Michael has 2 gay moms. And it's like, well, you could have said in canon that he has 2 gay moms. Like,
yeah, like at any point in time, he could have like yelled off stage or something, or been like, oh, my mom's calling me right now. And Jeremy could have been like, which one? It would be like so easy. Just like add 2 or 3 lines that could make that apparent, which that's even like not, that's again, not representation. That's just a vague mention, but it could have been something. They could have added that to the canon story rather than just saying things on like Twitter and Instagram live streams to please their fans so they can keep getting their fucking money, which I think is kind of despicable and like kind of manipulative, but like we're not going to get into the nuances of that because like, who fucking cares, really?
Yeah, and it's especially because like, other productions of, because shows get performed multiple times by like multiple different theaters, and those theaters can make, you know, creative decisions with costuming and with the set, and the actors, you know, have their different interpretations and stuff, but they can't actually change like the canon of the show, whereas the creators have that power. So I know other productions of this show have done things to make it more like inclusive of their fan base and to kind of like, you know, just acknowledge their fan base in that way. But they couldn't really do anything. So
yeah. Again, since like I am a theater production person, when you're putting on a production and if you want to change something, like let's take A Raisin in a Sun, for example. If you wanted to make Travis a girl in the show, you would have to write the company, explain why you're doing this, explain like what lines you would change, how it would change dynamics, and like have all these reasonings, and then they get to decide if they're going to let you do that or not. Like you can't just do things. But when you are the creator, you can do whatever the fuck you want because it's your show, it's your property. You don't have to report to anybody because you're the person who created this.
Go off. That was some very valuable input.
Thank you. I'm paying $20,000 a year. I better get something out of my fucking program. God. But it's not like just with Be More Chill. Like we're not just bitching about Be More Chill. Yeah. It's like, let's take like Book of Mormon, for example. Ooh. There is a gay character in Book of Mormon, and don't get me wrong, I love Book of Mormon. I'm going to see it like next year when it comes to my town. Like I fuck Book of Mormon. I love that show. But like,
yeah,
like is that good representation? Not really. And then like you have the added thing where like a lot of the people who have recently been playing Kevin Price will say things like, I think he's gay. I play him as gay, but he's repressed. Because his whole character is fucking repressed the entire show. But a lot of the actors will be like, I think he's gay. I'm playing him as gay. He's definitely like not straight and stuff like that. But like, yeah, that's an interpretation. But like, what good does it do if like it's not canon? Like you can have him like check McKinley out or whatever all you want, look him up and down. But like at the end of the day, like, did he just do it? Like you can't you can't take things that aren't in the canon of the show and call the representation because
and
like
the same thing. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say because it doesn't like really count, which is like kind of shitty, I guess. But like it's basically just a headcanon, whether it comes from the actor or the creator. But until it's in the show, it like doesn't matter in like this day and age. Like before it did because that's all we had was coding. But like that's not coding. That's just an actor being like, I think he's gay. And like, that's cool, but that's not, again, how coding works. Like, and a lot of people be like, oh, Kevin Price is gay coded. And it's like, yeah, he's definitely played as, like, a lot of people play him as gay, but that's not coding.
No. And the same thing happened in Mean Girls, which also is, like, a newer musical that has a lot of, like, new fans. Because in the movie, they have, like, this kind of running thing throughout the movie where, what's his name? Like Damien? Is it Damien?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and they're friends, and Damien is gay, and everyone thinks that Janice is a lesbian, and so she's been like excluded from like society at her school. I mean, you guys all know this. Everyone knows Mean Girls, but so then, and I was never really comfortable with the way that was played, but you know. But then in the musical, they had the opportunity to actually make her a lesbian, even just with like a few lines, since it's so heavily like kind of implied in the movie. And then like in the movie, basically at the last second, they turned around and were like, oh, she's straight. But they could have not done that in the musical, and they could have like actively made her a lesbian, and they didn't. And then the actress, comes out and is like, oh, well, Janice is totally a lesbian. I think she is. That's how I play her, which is awesome. But like, it's also still not canon. And then everyone is like, oh my God, Janice is a canon lesbian. And it's just not actually there. So people come to the show expecting that, and then it's not there. It's not what they're getting.
Yeah. It's like whether or not what they say, again, like on social media or like in interviews, it's like not everybody is going to go consume that content. So they're like, it's kind of like a cop out to like keep the audience that like doesn't really want to see that or won't relate to it, because the people who do want that and like do need that like representation are going to go out and find it. So like, again, with like the whole coding thing, like coding was a necessity in the past, but like we're in a day and age now where you're just a fucking coward if you're going under coded as this, coded as that. Like that's just a coward's move, because like there's no reason why you can't put fucking lesbians and trans people and gay men like as your characters. Like they live lives, and it doesn't always has to be about them like being fucking gay. Like I talk about I'm gay all the time, but like their stories don't have to be about them coming out. They don't have to be tragic. Like they could just be like, oh, by the way, I'm gay. It's not that hard to just have gay people existing. But Broadway, especially for something that's so gay and like LGBT friendly, it lacks actually having representation or stories that involve us. But we're all like, there's a large amount of us telling stories, but none of them are ours.
It's like, I don't know, it's a lot. And especially because people in the LGBT community have been making LGBT theater for years and years and years, even before it was commonly accepted. And not just with subtext, although that was like a huge thing, but not just with subtext. Like there's been explicit LGBT content. Like the show, the play The God of Vengeance that came out in the 1900s, I think. Yeah. And they made I think, was it a movie or was it a show about that recently? Indecent. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks really good. I just found a really homophobic review of it, so now I'm pissed. But anyway, but yeah, it was a Yiddish play, and they made this show, and it was on Broadway, I believe, and it had an explicit lesbian love story in it. And so they did that show, and all the actors got arrested, like after opening night, I think. Like they all got arrested. But you know, the show still exists. Like the play is still out there. You can read it. Like they went and they did that, and they created this story for themselves. And then you have stuff like falsettos and trousers, the gay characters in a chorus line, that were all put in there in like the 80s, or like late 70s. And like that shit existed. I had a straight woman once. She was arguing with me basically that I would never be able to get a job in the acting industry because they wouldn't accept diverse people, and they would never accept you if you're not like fitting into their models. And like she said a bunch of really like toxic stuff, honestly. And then she was saying something about how there was like no gay representation in Broadway in the 80s and stuff. And there was. It's just that there's such a stigma around it that we never talk about it. And anyone who does talk about it is like instantly shut down in the theater world. So.
Yeah. And like right now, I'm on an LGBT theater's website.
Ooh.
It's called the Diversionary Theater.
Diversionary.
I can't fucking say. Anyways, it's the third oldest LGBT theater in the country, and it's in San Diego. And they have archives, and their whole point is to put on shows that like are by gay people and like for gay people, and like highlight them. And they have like probably 100 fucking like plays and musicals that I've never fucking heard of. God. Like all the way back to 1986.
It's like road trip to San
since
Diego.
They started. So like it's like it's not like there aren't LGBT people like creating stories and like putting them out there. It's just that we don't really let them go anywhere because again, they're written off as no one wants to see that. No one relates to that. Like,
and you have tons of shows too that like there are a lot of LGBT shows that don't even like make it to New York basically. And I've seen like a pretty decent amount, you know. I mean, obviously I don't have like the finances to just be seeing shows constantly, but I've seen a pretty decent amount of shows that highlight like gay characters and trans characters, and no one knows them. No one thinks about them. And then a lot of the time when I've talked about this stuff to other people, because a lot of this stuff just spreads by word of mouth, honestly. And when I've talked about this stuff to other people, they immediately lose interest in a way that they wouldn't really if it was like, you know, like a cishet equivalent of the show. Even sometimes if they are in the LGBT community, like it just becomes so ingrained that like everyone thinks like, you know, they see like, oh, this has like all the main characters are gay, and they immediately think, oh, it's going to be like boring and pretentious and obscure and like not fun and lighthearted and like, I don't know, all this shit that they say. So it never really, no one looks at it. No one talks about it. No one makes like fan content for it. And that's the way that a lot of this stuff gets popular nowadays. Like that's the way that it gets spread around.
Yeah. Like kind of like circling back to like at the very start when Aaron was talking about how like people write off like gay things as obscure or try to push them as obscure. Like they say that with, again, like things like falsettos or like Angels in America, and it's like things that are obscure don't perform or like get Tonys, so like it doesn't fucking add up when like they're trying to be like, oh well, that's just like obscure and it's like just an obscure gay thing, and it's like it was at the Tonys, like they have Tony Awards, that's not obscure. And then like I don't get the whole boring thing either, because one, Falsettos is one of the funniest fucking musicals I've ever like
It's so
seen.
fucking good. Every song is a banger.
Yeah, Angels in America, also pretty fucking hilarious. Like, I'm sorry, like she's long as shit, but like the new, like the last version that like with like Andrew Garfield and shit, fucking hilarious. His acting,
I love her.
God tier. But like it's like they can't take anything that's like, they're just like, oh, they like see the words AIDS and they're like, it's one of those. It's like just old news, which like false. First of all, HIV AIDS is still a crisis. And like two, like why does that push you away? Like why? Like what like internalized homophobia do you have to where you see that and you immediately go death trap? Because like yeah, those plays do have death in them and they deal with that, but like how do you like just consume media that like gives you good representation like by people who are like you, and instead you go to be like, Alexander Hamilton was technically bi, so it's fucking LGBT rep, which like false, like shut the fuck up.
I mean, like incorrect. He was. I hate Hamilton, but he was. But they like Lin-Manuel Miranda actively chose not to have any LGBT representation in his show, to the point where he like created a fake heterosexual love triangle that was like historically inaccurate. So like, yeah.
Yeah, no, but like if you're so desperate, like people are always like, we're so desperate for representation, but then they immediately like just refuse to support.
It's this totally weird phenomenon where every time they see an LGBT show, it's like their brain like immediately like writes it out, like it just forgets it the second the name enters their mind, and then they like keep themselves like starving for this, and they live for like breadcrumbs and shit and like gay side characters and like little like hints like and stuff like Michael Mell having a rainbow patch, and it is important to them. Like they want this representation, but they just are like subconsciously rejecting it, and it's a really weird phenomenon. And I just like, the more I, kind of look around me and get involved in this stuff, the more I notice people like basically doing anything they can to like smear LGBT stories, and then everyone else kind of just like eats it up. Like there's this whole new thing now where people are like saying that Rent like fills the like bury your gays trope, and everyone thinks it's smart as shit. I've seen like 5 separate instances of people like going off on some like overly intellectual like queer theorist like crap about this show, and everyone is like, yeah, that sounds about right, that sounds legit. Like just
that like specifically like rubs me wrong. Like I don't necessarily like I'm not like the biggest fan of Rent, like not because it's problematic, just because like I don't know, it's just not one of the ones that really rustled my fucking jimmies or whatever. But like literally, if you knew anything about the show, if you could simply type in like fucking like Jonathan Larson, you would like be able to figure out like he wrote Rent based on his life. Like the characters in Rent are based off of people he knows. Like
yeah, like goddamn, it's a lot, and people just tend to like have zero critical thinking. There's also like, going back to like how much of like a disconnect there is. It's not even just within like the theater community, it's within like the actual industry itself. Like they really do like paint themselves as a very inclusive industry. And then like as a trans person, like I am totally alone and totally isolated every time I am in a show, every time I take a class, like anything that is related to theater, I go in, and if it's not specifically LGBT, I have nothing. And a lot of the time I am very alienated and excluded in a way that like takes away my opportunities to act, basically. um and yet they still like paint themselves as this like inclusive. I even had like one time I was in a workshop, and we were, doing like a little show at the end because it's high school, so we do shit like that. And then the director kept forgetting what role I had and trying to give my role to other people because it was a male role, and he refused to acknowledge that I was trans. And so I almost just didn't get to play my fucking part because he kept trying to give it to other people. And if someone had wanted it, no one else wanted it. But if someone had wanted it, I would have been like ass out, basically.
That's so fucking shitty.
It was so nasty. That whole thing was awful. Yeah. Like, he was... God. I'm not even going to go into it, but that whole environment at that place was so deeply uncomfortable and nasty.
Yeah. There's another hot take that when I first saw people genuinely like being like, you know what, that's fucking valid to say. Like, it blew my fucking mind. I think once I say it, like, you'll know, but like those people who are like, Fun Home is bad because one of the characters is like a pedophile. And it's like, that's based off her fucking life. Like what? That's not like she just out of her ass was like, you know what I should do? Make this gay man a pedophile. Like, that was based off her actual fucking life. And people are trying to be like, this is a hot take. Don't support Fun Home because like it depicts gay men like this, which it's like, she's not depicting them. She's telling her life story, which is not.
It's also like, it's not even depicting gay men like that. It's like, in this case, it's very specific to this one guy. And because I have the graphic novel, and in the graphic novel, it's like, the portrayal of him is a lot different because, of course, he's her father. So she's like, I mean, dads are awful. So, and then in the musical, like, the portrayal of how he experiences, like, internalized homophobia is a lot more highlighted and a lot more nuanced, in a way that makes him a more sympathetic character, whether you like it or not. So even then, it's kind of a bullshit argument. But also, like, funny coincidence that they're saying that about like one of the very, 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 very few musicals with any lesbian characters at all that have ever like even gotten close to Broadway. So, yay.
Yeah, speaking of like lesbians, like I don't like people who are involved with theater. Like, it gets passed around so fast. Like, what's being shown on and off Broadway. Upcoming things, especially in a community where you are, like, in theater and in LGBT, because, like, the circle gets smaller. And I see so little news on The Prom, which is about lesbians. It's not a tragic lesbian story. It's about lesbians and prom. And like,
and it's a fun, lighthearted musical.
And everybody always says, I don't watch these gay shows because they're too heavy. But as soon as you get handed something like a lighthearted musical about lesbians, you just fucking wipe the floor with it and like don't acknowledge it at all. And like, that makes no sense to me because like, it's so cute. Like, I haven't like seen a ton of content for it again, but like I see like the cast updates because I follow them on Instagram and like they're so cute and it's so fun. But like,
have you seen it? Because I've seen it.
No, I haven't yet.
And
I've been meaning
to.
to.
I can give
Please
you
give it to me. But like nobody fucking talks about other than like my 5 mutuals on Twitter who are lesbians. Like literally like it's out, it's good, and like everybody it like has good reviews, and like everybody I know who's like consumed it has been like, wow, it's so cute and like good. But still everybody who's like begging and crying at like we need LGBT representation. Stop trying to shame us for saying like Michael's gay, because like, but like you fucking would rather cling on to something that's not real. And like, again, headcanons are fine, but like you're clinging on to that over actual fucking lesbians. And then you're telling like Broadway people, oh, it's not making it because like no one cares, because you're just refused to fucking actually support the community. You like being able to make up these instances and not actually have to see them followed through for some fucking reason.
God, go off. And it's like, it's so difficult to actually get these shows on Broadway. Like, I don't think they realize how difficult it is to get to that point when you're not like a totally cishet show. Like, it, even when you are, it's difficult. And then if you have a show that highlights LGBT characters, it's fucking impossible almost. Like, this is a huge deal. And the show itself is really fucking good. Like, it has the perfect balance of, like, it's a comedic show, you know, it's like a romantic comedy. And it has the perfect balance of that and being, like, totally fun and totally fucking hilarious. And then also showing these really meaningful realities of the gay experience that I think are really relatable for a lot of LGBT teenagers. And, you know, it does a really good job of like balancing that out and showing it really, really well. And the fact that people just immediately write it off because it doesn't fit in their little sphere of musicals, which honestly, in addition to not being diverse in any way, like these are usually super white shows also. But in addition to that, they also are the ones that are making a ton of money basically, and they're given a ton of money. And then like, sorry, but yeah, and the fact that it's like being written off because it doesn't have those benefits really like grinds my gears, because it's just a really amazing show and it's clear that the people who made it worked so hard on it, and it's really good representation. Like, it's just really quality representation.
Yeah. And like, again, with like representation, like I can like name probably a couple different like gay characters off the top of my head, but like literally over half of them are all fucking jokes. Like, again, we already talked about Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon's a comedy show. He's not like there for actual representation. He's comedy relief because, you know, repressed gays in Mormon society. That's funny because that's just, we love repressed people, and like it is funny because also it's kind of relatable, but not the point. But like then like Spring Awakening, there's no reason for Hanshin and Ernst to sorry, I could not remember how to say his fucking name, to be played as a joke. They're not supposed to be played as a joke, but straight people, every production, make it a joke. Everybody laughs at it for some reason. They always make them play it so weirdly and almost predatorily, which like it's not. Like, they're complex characters, but like it can be like played like that, but like it's not supposed to be a joke. Like, why do Wendella and Melchior, like Melchior, who's rapes Wendella, like why do they get to have like that serious, like doing air quotes, like serious loving romance, but then when it comes to their gay characters who are like almost a parallel to them because they have the parallel song, the parallel to them, they get played as a joke, and there's no reason for them to, because like they're supposed to still be involved and in love.
Not
like
to mention
they always,
like, oh sorry.
I was gonna say, like, it's always like the audience is laughing their ass off. They're always moving so like abruptly and intensely and like moving around in a way that's not stilted. Natural. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention like the biphobia and how Hanshin is portrayed just as an individual character. It's just very, very obvious. And it's nasty. And like, I don't like to I don't want to talk about this too much, but like like at the end of Be More Chill, they have the one character be like, oh my god, I'm totally bi. And it's like this one-liner, and you know, it's kind of funny, and everyone's like hee hee hee, and then it's never mentioned again. So they have shit like that, and then like
and I think I was just gonna real quick to add on to that, they added in the revival like that line where he asks like Jeremy if like his friend's single, and like that's even a joke. So like, why do you keep just why is like that treated as a joke? Like that could have just been like a genuine question if you're trying to actually further him to like be like, hey, here's a little bit more from like the fucking like little like crust of bread we're giving you. Here's like a full slice. But like that's even played off as a joke. As per usual, at this point, you guys are probably getting really fucking sick of Aaron and mine's like humble onions. And for this episode, instead of interviewing some...
Did you just say our humble audience?
I said onions.
Oh.
You're a fucking idiot. Anyways.
I'm Laird.
Instead... Instead of interviewing just one person, we actually made a little survey. And our survey basically it was answered by 120 people. Damn. So thank you to everybody who took the time to answer it. And it was basically asking people to recall off the top of their heads, like the amount of LGBT characters they could think of, the amount of LGBT shows, and then like followed up with some questions like, do you feel like they're often played as jokes and stuff like that? So like it was kind of just to like, it wasn't to like see how many gay musicals, because like that'd be fucking stupid. Sorry, but like no one on tumblr.com or twitter.com fucking knows every goddamn gay musical, and it definitely shows through this survey.
It's more to like just suss out like what is getting out there enough that people actually know it and how much is getting out there.
Yeah, because like, and again, we said top of your head, because if you think about it too long, you definitely, the list could go on. But like off the top of your head, like even I can only probably get to about 10 before I start stalling. Like, so we were trying to really like see what was like relevant, like how many like were relevant to you, like relevant enough to where you could remember them. And like that like is like popular media enough to like where you could like just list it off. So we're really trying to get like that like gut, like these are some gay characters, these are some trans characters, like. So I did some averages and stuff like that, and we're going to kind of talk about the results. So at first question we asked how many of the people who answered our questions were LGBT, just so we could kind of get like our sample size. And 10.2% were not LGBT, and 89.8% were LGBT. So it's mostly people who are in the LGBT community. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about these like answers. So you can kind of see like it's not like, oh, well, you just ask straight people. Like it's people who are in the community mostly answering these. And then I also just asked a quick like, what kind of theater are you into? And like 83% said Broadway. 99% said musicals. Literally only one person did not say they were into musicals.
What did they say?
I think they said they were into Broadway, and that was it.
Damn.
Hey, Jensen. Hi. And then 64% said they were into plays, and there was it was like a multiple choice answer, and there was like a bunch of like random ones because people just basically typed in a bunch of different variations of like everything I can get my grubby little hands on. So like I didn't really do anything with those numbers because it was all like 0.009% because like one person would type it in slightly different. Giving you an other option was a mistake, gamers. But so anyways, that's the kind of like just general like who's answering this and what kind of like media do they consume. So like it's pretty LGBT centric for the people who answered it, and it's pretty much like the three main parts of like theater we think of like pretty covered. And then the next question we asked was, how many LGBT stories can you think of off the top of your head? And the average for that was 5.11, which feels very small.
We got some good asks though after we put that out. Like we got a couple asks that were recommending like LGBT shows, and that was really cool.
Yeah. And to follow up that question, we asked how many characters in like overall, like not in just LGBT shows, can they think of off the top of their head? And the average was 10.35.
Damn. Which there's a lot of shows out there.
Yeah.
There's kids that like make like a hobby of having like every single Broadway show they can think of on one fucking Spotify playlist, and they'll have like 80 shows on there, and like it's like a bragging rights thing. So that's like a very small number considering.
Yeah, and then we asked how many of those stories that they said were about like gay, lesbian, or bi people, and the average answer was 4.52. And then to follow that up, we asked how many of those stories that they listed were about trans folk, and the average was 0.6.
Damn.
And just as a little like side note to really give you the reality of that, 52.5% of the people who filled out our survey answered to that question 0.
Damn. Also, like, some of the people that followed me might have answered it, and those would be the Albert Cashier people, so you might just have a bunch of Albert Cashier people. I don't know.
Yeah, the highest number of trans people for any of the questions that was answered, none of it got over 4.
Damn.
Like, gay people, like, some people like could list 27, but nobody got over 4 trans characters.
Damn.
And then we asked how many of the characters that they had listed off, like as LGBT, were lesbian, gay, or bi, and the average was 9. So like most of them were of a gay identity. And then we asked how many of those characters were trans, and the average was 0.8. And for that question, 44.9% said 0. So just another like, whoa,
Jesus.
Oof. And then so those were like kind of like to see like what people like knew off the top of their heads. And like honestly, it was kind of a bit surprising because like I thought like the average would be a bit higher, but like after like seeing the answers, a lot of people couldn't get over like 7 like gay characters. And like me to that was like wild, especially with like the amount of LGBT people who answered this survey. Like it just seems ridiculous that like you can't
especially
name
there's
that
a
many.
lot more
and,
shows
like,
out, like a lot. I think a lot of the reasons for this are that there are like, you know, some popular LGBT show. I mean, like popular like within the LGBT theater community, but no one, like there'll be like a group of people that knows one show and then a group that knows the other one, and like there's no, like I can't really think of any shows that are like one thing that like every LGBT theater person I meet will like know them. You know what I mean?
It's just Rent.
Yeah.
The only one I can think of that every
LGBT
person I know can name is Rent.
Sometimes they know falsettos. Like a lot of them know falsettos, but not always.
Yeah. Okay. And then to follow up that set of questions, we had some questions with a scale from not often to very often. And I'm going to be just talking about like who said often and who said not. And then like the people in the middle, like just like any of like, if you like do the math, like that percentage are the people who answered like in the middle, just so like you're not like, hey, that math's funky. Like we don't need to go over like who exactly said like exactly in the middle, like not relevant. So the first one we asked on that scale was, how often do you feel that the LGBT characters play as a joke? 52.6% of responses said often, and 17.8% said not often. So like that's a pretty big like fucking difference, honestly. Like like oof.
Yikes.
Rough. Yeah, I'm just at a loss. And then the next question was, how often do you feel like the LGBT character is a main character? And 11.9% said often, while 68.6% said not often.
Jesus Christ.
Which is, like, again, that's, like, crazy. Like, you fucking, like, that's so fucking, that's such a, like, a gaping fucking difference. Like, what the fuck?
I wasn't, like, expecting that, honestly. I thought the percentage of, like, main characters would be higher.
Yeah. Oh, and just for reference, Aaron hasn't, like, seen the percentages or anything since, like, I'm the one who, like, made it. So, like, I'm just throwing these in. These are, like, Aaron's, like, genuinely, like, what?
Like, wow,
but,
he really does hate me.
That's what you get for being a dirty little homo. Yeah, and then after that question, we asked, how often do you feel that LGBT stories are similar? Like the character stories are similar, like the plot similar. and 62.7% said often, while only 11% said not often, which is also very telling because it shows that like we're stuck in this narrative and like the only shows that like, again, it's just, we're just being pushed into this one narrative, which usually in like the sense of like just in general and explicitly in like Broadway and stuff is more tragic than it's not.
Plus, a lot of the times there's stuff that like it generalizes in a way that doesn't actually even represent us. Like in our, like I've seen as a trans person, I've seen like some trans representation, but I've only seen 2 instances of trans representation that I related to. And those characters were like way different from me. Like they had way different lives, but it was like authentic and like not generalized. So I was like, oh yeah, like that's my experience. And I feel like there's a distinct lack of that, like across the whole spectrum of LGBT representation.
Yeah. And speaking of similar stories, the next question that we asked was, how often do you feel that these stories are tragic? And unshockingly, 87.2% said often.
Jesus.
While 1.7% said not often.
God damn.
I want to talk to the people who said not often and like ask them what shows they're watching, honestly. So like are we consuming the same media?
Maybe they're just like thinking about like bittersweet stuff.
One of our final questions and the last one that we're going to talk about was how do you feel like these shows end? And again, this one isn't too shocking, but it still like made my like heart twinge a little when like I was looking over the responses, and 3.4% of responses said they typically end happy. 5.9% said that they end neutral, neither like overtly happy or tragic. 37% said about 50-50. And 53.8% said tragic.
I hate straight people.
Honestly, the results of the survey aren't like something that like the results of the survey like are kind of as I was expecting it. Like I'm not a fucking idiot. I mean, I am, but like not in this way. But like still like actually like seeing them rather than just me being like, oh, that's how it is. Like it just feels bad. Like looking at them, I just like felt like defeated. I was like, oh, this fucking sucks. Like, yeah, that's really it. It just fucking sucks. It blows. It's garbage, trash, and it makes me fucking angry.
It's our reality, fellas. Don't worry, guys, because me and Isaac are gonna make some trans musicals and a non-experimental gay film. No uncircumcised dicks. Fuck you.
Bitch. Anyways.
Heathen.
Yeah, we just feel like it's important as a community that we kind of like recognize the things that like are so deeply like associated with us, and how like, yeah, people like will be like, musical theater is like such a gay thing. It's like so gay. It's like for the gays. But like, is it really? You need to take a step back and think about it. Like, is it really for us? Like, yeah, we're like really involved with it. And like, there are a lot of gay people in the theater industry, but like, what is it doing for us really?
Dominate the industry.
Yeah. And like, I feel like it's overplayed a lot for the way that like, again, like, oh, you're in theater, you must be a homo. And yet like,
it's also like, it's done that, like it's overplayed that way, and theater is portrayed as like a white gay man thing for the benefit of cishet people. Like they benefit directly from that, like financially, and in their like they get shit out of that and they feel great about it. And it doesn't benefit gay people, because if you're a gay actor, you have a harder time finding roles, and it's harder to like be able to study acting when you're younger and stuff. And they police your body language. I think, as a trans person, I see, like, I pick up on this more, but they totally police your body language. They police how, like, masculine you are as a gay man. And like, lesbians are pretty much, like, completely excluded from acting and a lot of other parts of theater, which is just completely shitty. And, like, cishet people benefit from it, and they make money off of that. So that's a wrap.
Yeah,
boys.
that's kind of just like a wrap on how we feel about the theater community in terms of being gay and trans and kind of stuff like that. Support your local theaters. Go out and actively support LGBT shows. Stop, like, writing them off. Like, actually, like, have some, like, not everything is, like, going to get to Broadway. Like, it's very rare that LGBT stories get there, but they are put on by a lot of local communities. Reach out to that, or find, like, a lot of them have their production. Yeah, Aaron's a little extra bitch, but, like, you can, like, find the scripts. There is some sort of media out there, or, like, you can at least be aware of them and, like, kind of, like, get them started back up. So, like, maybe, like, a local community will pick it up because it's starting to, like, and stuff like that.
It also means a lot if you see, like, a small LGBT show and you can't attend because it's not, like, near where you live. A lot of the times the actors and the creators and everyone involved with production is on social media. And if you find them and you give them a nice message, you say, oh, like, your show looks so cool. I'm so glad that this representation is out there. Like, that means a lot to them. And it can be a really nice thing to do to, like, show them that you support them and that you see their content that they're making.
Yeah. Support the LGBT in theater because bitches, it's good. But yeah. Yeah. Anyways, make sure that you take a look at our Tumblr post for this month, because it will include mine and Aaron's monthly LGBT recs for things that we think are just good representation. Because sometimes things are popular and they're not good representation. And it's annoying as shit. Yeah, and there'll also be links to like our Twitter, our SoundCloud, and our YouTube, which are the other places that you can find our podcast. Again, thank you to everybody who answered our survey. It meant a lot to us that you would take a moment to fill that out. It's just cool being able to highlight other people, even if it wasn't once a specific person, because, like, we think that's important. And also, big shout out to my boyfriend for our intro and outro song. He's hot, and I did it up.
You did not date up. You're both superb little nerds.
Shut the fuck up. Anyways, any final notes, Aaron? Get out there, support the community, go actually see some real LGBT shows, even if you just watch the bootleg, and start tweeting about it. Do that shit. Stop being fucking cowards about it. Like, I just whipped again. You can't see it.
I heard